Hey guys, what's up? Working camera. Let's see if it will keep working. I actually had another recording because the camera wasn't working yesterday. I had another recorder which I had in mind, and I wanted to put that one up because I'm talking on a rather broad topic, and I bring up a lot of points and stuff that I wanted other people to comment on and give me their impressions and try to complete my thinking on it. And I even having video responses, that would have been cool, and I even called out some people I wanted to see responses for. But it's 30 fucking minutes, and yeah, I mean, that's kind of long. I was going to have to cut it up into 3 parts, and I was doing the editing a little while ago, and I was just like, oh shit, maybe I should just re-record this and make it shorter. I don't know. But while I'm going through all this, there were some interesting comments that were coming up under a video I made recently. And after dealing with those comments and responding myself, I'm realizing, I was like, you know what, I need to do this video instead. I need to make an example of this guy because I'm realizing that this is a good example of what I was talking about when I said in an earlier video of mine about the dangers of dogmatic thinking. Because this person who's dropping these comments is a great example of how ignorant a dogmatic thinker can be on a variety of subjects. And this also kind of links into what I was talking about in that recording that, you know, I want to put up anyway, because I touch on the problems of dogmatic thinkers, particularly the fact that they think that they already have the answer to something. And that's one of the biggest problems with dogmatic thinkers. When they think they already know shit, there is no desire or no motivation to learn anything else. Because they know it already. I mean, if you already think you're perfect, what's there to improve? What's there to seek out? You're already perfect. If you think you already know it all, you're not going to go further. If you decided to accept the answer that babies come from flying storks, and you just wholeheartedly accept it above all else, then you're not going to bother to research it further, and thus you're going to end up looking like a laughingstock to those who understand where babies actually do come from. But if that belief that storks carrying babies makes you feel good, and you're stuck with dogmatic thinking, you're not going to give that belief up, despite evidence to the contrary. And I know I came up with a rather crazy example, considering how the hell would you not be able to figure it out, but considering how deluded human beings can sometimes be, who knows? I'm going off topic. I normally don't like making examples of people on YouTube, and I know I had some more volatile earlier years on YouTube where every now and then I got it in with someone or mentioned someone by name, but generally I don't like doing that, especially these days and times. I'd rather just ignore the morons and just make my videos, but in this case, I had to do this, not only because I was amazed by just how bombastically ignorant this guy was, but this is really, I think, a great example of what I mean about the nature of dogmatic thinkers and just how deluded they can be. I mean, incredibly deluded. Say hello to cmpresents. He has been posting several humorous comments under my video, 4 things I wanted to touch on. Part 1. He's a Christian, and he had a problem with me talking about blind belief. And, I mean, never mind the fact that, you know, I was speaking very generally, and he apparently took offense with the fact that I'm linking the Bible to blind belief, though I didn't say the Bible itself was blind belief. It's more of just wholeheartedly accepting every word in it without, you know, any form of scrutiny or critical thinking. That's blind belief. Never mind. This guy took issue with that, and I started responding to him as civilly as possible, and he just continued to say more and more things which exposed their ignorance. And that's one thing that I want you guys to notice. And in fact, I'm going to put a link up in the description where of the comments themselves, so you can read along if you want, or read it later or whatever, or read it before you continue watching this, however you prefer. And not only are you going to laugh your asses off, but I think this will give you a good example of what I'm trying to show, because with every statement he makes, he exposes that he doesn't know anything. And the scary thing is, he doesn't know that he doesn't know anything, because he thinks he knows everything. The first thing that really cracked me up is when he was saying, you call the greatest literary book of all time blind belief? No, I didn't. I said just accepting it blindly is blind belief. Also, he calls it the greatest literary book. And I very, calmly had asked him, said to him, you might want to look up the word literature. Because we tend to associate that word with fiction. Yes, I know that nonfiction is a part of literature. But generally when we think of nonfiction in literature, we tend to think of nonfiction that is written in prose or, in a poetry-like way or written in some type of embellished or bombastic fashion which makes it look like fiction. So if you're trying to tell me that the Bible is one of the greatest books that I'm supposed to follow, but then call it one of the greatest literary works, you're giving mixed messages here. But of course, if he understood what the word meant and its connotations, he wouldn't have made that mistake, which again goes to show what I'm talking about with dogmatic thinkers when they think that they know something and they don't because they're stuck in one groove. After, addressing him on that bit of stupidity, he also continues to harp on this whole thing about, we have an answer, you have no answer. And in his very first post, he also stated that Christians have no problem because they have the answer, and people like me have a problem because we haven't accepted Christianity, and thus we are confused in our minds. Well, my wife would say an answer to what exactly? Which is a good fucking question, but putting that to the side, it doesn't mean shit that you just have an answer. See my Stork Baby example. Or see, alright, kids, a bunch of kindergartners in a room, what's 2 plus 2? And one of them thinks, oh, it's 22. You put a 2 here and you put a 2 here, it's 22. That's an answer. It's not a truthful one, but it's an answer. Doesn't mean shit. Plus, he exposes a lot about the dogmatic mind when he equates not having an answer with struggling in the mind. The funny thing is, if you watch that video, I don't talk about being confused in my head or struggling with the mind, or I don't know what to do, I'm having an existential crisis. There's none of that in the fucking video. But to him, that's there because I'm not a Christian. To a dogmatic thinker who already has everything laid out for him about how society should be, or how people should act, or how the world should function, that's order. That's the way things are, period. Anything that does not go along with that is chaos. So to him, a non-Christian is constantly wallowing around in confusion and disorder, and doesn't know what to do because he himself can't imagine not living that way because he's a dogmatic thinker. But I want to try to speed through some of these to share the humor with you, because there is plenty of humor here. Plenty of humor here. In one of his comments, and you can read along, he says, you will never find another book like the Bible with all its mysteries, parables, metaphors, allegories, poems, songs, etc. The Bhagavad Gita, anyone? Quran, the Enuma Elish, or the Egyptian Book of the Dead. There's plenty of shit out there that has tons of these things in it. There's modern works with all this stuff in it. Some which I dare say are done better than what you'd find in the Bible, to be honest with you. It's bullshit. Then he goes on to say that Jesus is the most famous man of history. I'm going to read this word for word for you guys. Do you know that Jesus is the most famous man of history? No other man in history spoke like Jesus. No other man in history spoke in parables. No other man in history combined 2 books into one. I'll wait for you to stop laughing. Okay. Let's dissect the amount of fail that's in this comment, shall we? Jesus is the most famous man in history. I'm pretty sure historians will contend with that. You could argue that he's one of the most famous religious people in history. And I say one of because there's plenty of other religious people in history who are famous, depending on what culture you're in. And even in cultures that are Christian, we have heard of others. And I'm pretty sure you guys are naming some off the top of your head. I happen to be living in a Western culture right now, preoccupied with Christianity, but we all know who Buddha is. Right? We all know who Muhammad is. Well, I do remember that Americans were so fucking ignorant that it wasn't until 9/11 that they started realizing what Islam was, but I digress. We know who Muhammad is. We know who Lao Tzu is. If you are not ignorant, and these people are famous, and if you're going to be talking about history, there's tons of people in history who just about everybody knows. I'm going to make the controversial statement that shit, Hitler is probably as famous as fucking Jesus is. For all the wrong reasons, mind you. He's associated with evil, and for good fucking reason. But that's why he's famous. To say that, oh, Jesus is the most famous and above all others. Now we're dealing with the realm of the fanboy here. Then he goes, no other man in history spoke like Jesus. Jesus was an apocalyptic speaker, an apocalyptic preacher. If cmpresents is watching this right now, you probably have no fucking clue what I mean when I say that he was an apocalyptic preacher. So do yourself a favor and educate yourself on the subject. In that particular time period, now that the kingdom of Jerusalem had fallen and Rome was pretty much running shit, in fact, they already got first they got their asses kicked by the Babylonians, and then they got their asses kicked by the Romans. They were trying to find a way that would get their glory days back. And usually whenever you're dealing with a society that used to have glory days and now their society is in disarray and it's no longer the top dog, or they're struggling now and they have to answer to somebody else, you will see people coming out the woodwork talking about the end is nigh and the chosen ones will rise again. We're seeing inklings of that in the United States right now, by the way. All these things about we must reclaim our power and we must cleanse ourselves of sin. Jesus wasn't the only one talking about that back then. Not only that, but, well, remember, he was a Judahite. He was Jewish. He was speaking from a certain mindset of others of his time period. He was speaking from scriptures accepted by others in his time period and before that and after that. So there were tons of people who spoke like him before he showed up, and there were people who spoke like him after he showed up. And forget just his religion. You read a whole bunch of other religions and you'll find people with that similar mindset. Look at the Quran. It's full of shit like that. And considering that they consider Jesus to be a great prophet in Islam, I guess that's not really surprising. Let's go on to the next bit of fail. No other man in history spoke in parables. Okay. I'm waiting for you guys to stop laughing. Yeah, he did say no one else spoke in parables. I named 5 to him afterwards, which I will get into in a moment. But yeah, just think about that. This is the type of ignorance I'm talking about. No other man in history combined, well, he wrote combine, but I'll edit for him. No other man in history combined 2 books into one. First off, there is no mention in the Bible whatsoever that Jesus ever combined any books. In fact, there is no mention whatsoever of Jesus actually writing any books. And as far as combining books into one, this is shit that goes on to this day. If you've read The Lord of the Rings, all 3 stories in one fucking volume, that's 3 books into one. This is not a great fucking feat. Also, the Bible isn't 2 books. It's 66 books. And it used to be more or less, depending on what group of Christian elders were meddling with it at the time. Our concept of the Bible in its finished form only came about, I think, during like the 15th or 16th centuries. I'm not too sure. I might have to recheck the dates on that. But yeah, the Bible wasn't fully written back then, and it hadn't been fully written for a long time afterwards. They had to, pick and choose which books got to stay in or not. Like I said, the ignorance is astounding. But let's go into back when he was talking about the famous men of history and no other people, spoke in parables. Like I said, I named 5. Buddha, Gandhi, Lao Tzu, Chuang Tzu, Bodhidharma, even the goddamn Dalai Lama today. They all speak in fucking parables. Well, I'm not too sure about Gandhi, but I kind of have a memory. I don't know if it's a false memory, but I do kind of remember him speaking stories that have a lesson to the end of them. So, yeah, if you correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but I'm pretty sure he spoke a parable once or twice. So I mentioned those to him. And of course, the only one he latches on is Buddha. He doesn't even talk about the others because, of course, he has no idea probably who the hell those people are or what philosophies or religions they helped, found. And yeah, I know I've focused on the Eastern guys. I didn't talk about other, Western people or modern people, but I was kind of, blanking at the time. I was just typing fast, so forgive me for that. The next batch of statement, there's some really dumb shit in there, like when he was saying that, because he tried to slam Buddha, and basically he argued that Buddha was just some street preacher, and he just made shit up. Like Jesus didn't make shit up. Oh yes, I'm going there. Jesus also made shit up. And if you're watching CM Presents, keep in mind that this is the same man who said to his disciples that they would not die until the kingdom of God showed up. They were going to see the end of the world, and they would see him coming in full glory, and all 12 disciples, yes, including Judas Iscariot, would all have a seat in heaven with him, with the Holy Father. They would all get to rule. That didn't happen, did it? You're going to tell me that wasn't made up? And you're not going to tell me that the perspective that Jesus spoke from and the parables he came up with and the philosophy he tried to espout didn't come from his own experiences, much like Buddha's? Anyone preaching anything is going to put it in the context of their own experiences. Where else are you going to get it from? But anyway, this guy decided to throw a gauntlet down at me and decided he was going to challenge me by proving that Buddha just spoke garbage that cannot be compared to the wisdom of Jesus. And that if he could prove it, that I would have to publicly announce this and never compare Jesus to anyone ever again. Please. I laughed at that comment. I literally laughed at that comment. And I even told him I laughed at that comment, telling him that, look, I'm not accepting this challenge because you're going to fail at it anyway. Of course, that didn't stop our little failure, and thus he kept going. The first quote from Buddha that he tried to bring up to prove that Buddha didn't know what the hell he was talking about and was just some street preacher, he quotes, "Be greatly aware of reality as you meet or confront it each day, and from that become fit enough to deal with it." And he goes, this is what I mean, this is street philosophy, it's nonsense. Jesus never ever said anything as stupid as this. Kingdom, 12 disciples sitting in heaven. I'm sorry, I'm getting off topic. He goes, this is observation philosophy, which is no good because it can't be linked to his other philosophies. It can't be linked to his other philosophies. Once again, this proves his ignorance. Buddha's core philosophy was that life was an illusion, and that by understanding this illusion and trying to separate yourselves from desires and lusts that these illusions bring you to, you will escape the wheel of pain and enter enlightenment. Thus, so much of his concept was about human beings recognizing this reality around them. And thus, this quote, "Be greatly aware of reality as you meet or confront it each day," is linked to his philosophy. Round 1. CM Presents loses. Then, undaunted, he comes up with something else. He quotes, "Strive to be true to the best you know." He says this is another nonsensical saying. If there's no God, this is pure nonsense. What does a God existing have to do with striving to be true to the best of your knowledge? In fact, let's look at this. If there is a God, it would make sense that your God would want you to be true to the best of your ability, right? But if there isn't a God, it makes even more sense because there is no otherworldly being who's going to guide you to the right path. He doesn't have a set of rules for you. There's no one out there with a set of rules for you. If you truly want to be the best you can be, the only person you can really rely on is yourself. And you have to know yourself in order to be true to yourself, to, get the most out of life and be as good a person as you possibly can be. Strive to be true to the best you know. This isn't nonsense at all. And are you going to honestly try to tell me that Jesus would not want people to be true to the best of their ability? Round 2. You lose. But that didn't stop him. He goes, quotes from Buddha again, "Nothing we see or hear is perfect." But right there in the imperfection is perfect reality. And he goes, this is the last straw. This one is complete and utter nonsense. Jesus said, be perfect as my Father is perfect. First of all, you guys believe that God is the ultimate bit of perfection and that no human being can ever measure up to him. So wouldn't Jesus saying, be perfect as my Father is perfect, be utter nonsense if you guys believe that you can never be like God? Second, nothing we see or hear is perfect. That's nonsense? Okay. Can you see all the colors in the light spectrum? Can you hear every sound that's made? Like if a dog hears something, you can hear it too, right? Can you pick up every scent around? Have you ever fallen for a mirage? Have you ever heard something that you thought was something else? You hear a bit of creaking. There's someone coming up from behind me. Oh no, wait, it's the branch against the window. Nothing we see or hear is perfect. It's not nonsense, you fucking jackass. The other part of the quote, though, but right there in the imperfection is perfect reality. Now that does sound a bit like nonsense, though, doesn't it? Until we remember Buddha's core philosophy. Life is an illusion. The way our senses perceive reality around us is illusionary. There aren't just 7 colors in the light spectrum. The sounds we hear aren't the only ones to be heard. The scents we pick up aren't the only scents to be seen. We can't even see things on the microscopic level, nor can we understand things in the macroscopic level. We only know our own reality as our brains themselves develop it, which is an illusionary one. And by understanding that, we suddenly understand reality. Thus, in the imperfection is perfect reality. It's not nonsense. Round 3. You lose. And you want to know what the scary part is? If he's watching this right now, he doesn't think he's lost. He doesn't understand a fucking word I just said. Which goes along with dogmatic thinking, because when you're a dogmatic thinker, you're stuck in one groove. You're stuck in one pattern. You can't even begin to think clearly, and you don't even understand that you can't think clearly. You don't even realize that the nonsense coming out of your mouth is just that, nonsense. You don't even realize you're wrong when someone points it out. Like when I pointed out, no, there's not just 2 books, there's 66. Did he ever respond to that? No, he ignored it. Why? Because if his mind focuses on that, it would tell him, you don't know shit. And he can't have that because he has the answer. He does know shit, according to him, but he doesn't. He doesn't know a fucking thing. He's an ignorant clown. And it's not that he's a Christian that makes him an ignorant clown. It's the fact that he is what he is that makes him an ignorant clown. A dogmatic thinker. Someone who's stuck in one groove of thinking where he has a certain order, an orderly view of the world. A person who cannot interpret data correctly. Someone who cannot perceive the world around him in any other lenses other than his own stuck thinking that was given to him as a child, or worse, he accepted after he was possibly born again because he probably was living a life of no structure whatsoever because he was a fuck up, and then because somebody finally gave him religion to give order to his life, he now has found the true way. This is distilled ignorance. And it's frightening to me because this type of ignorance is contagious. Because it's comforting. When Divinity 3337 speaks about how religion is comforting in people's lives, she's not talking out of her ass. Because this is all people have. It's very comforting. It's meaningful to them in a world where they're not given any other tools to deal with reality. It feels great to them to have this order, this answer. But it's nonsense. And not only is it nonsense, it's making them act like jackasses to people who actually know better. And I'm not speaking from a position of superiority. I'm speaking as somebody who's distressed about what is happening to human knowledge today. Because I'm living in a country right now which is shitting on intellectualism more and more as the years pass. And I'm quite frankly getting sick of it. This is why I'm making an example of this guy, in the hopes that you guys can actually learn something from it. And also on the extremely slim chance that he himself, if he's watching this, will learn something from it. But I'm not holding my breath. just from our correspondence. I want to end this off here because this is way longer than I wanted this to be, but I also want to touch on something that I didn't touch on when I was reading his comments. The arrogance that was displayed throughout. Remember, he thought he had the answer already and that I was just some confused clod. And he constantly kept ending his comments with, "Goodbye, I'm leaving, I'm done with you," as if, he had the ultimate final word on the matter, even though he didn't know shit. And every time I answered him, even though he claimed that he was done, he still came back because he had to have the last word. Here's the thing. He's showing up under my video trying to have the last word and be an authority on a subject he really didn't know shit about. Think of the arrogance it must take to basically, figuratively go to someone's doorstep, spew a bunch of garbage to them, and then want to have the last word as they basically are like, "Why are you coming to my front door with this garbage when you are clearly wrong?" This is the type of arrogance that I notice are in dogmatic thinkers. And again, this has nothing to do with being religious. Racists, sexists, extreme right-wing nuts, extreme left-wing nuts. People who hold to an ideology above all else without even looking at anything else. They tend to have this bit of arrogance. And they think they're completely right. And they look like clowns to anybody with critical thinking skills. You see this in the comments. And I'm hoping you guys have noticed, because it is an important lesson to learn from. Anyway, that's it. This is way too long. Catch you guys later.